Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The spawn of Khorne are going to be taken to the battlefield in mass today as they look to do battle against the forces of Nurgle in this domination game. So for the forces of Khorne, we are going to be seeing those triple spawn of Khorne. These guys do have 190 weapon strength. That is going to be able to put a hurt on anything that Nurgle is going to be bringing. And for the infantry support, we do have Chaos Warriors of Halberds, 2 units of those, and some of the dual weapon variant. Dual weapons do have a nice bonus versus infantry, so it'll help against any of the Forsaken, Plague Bearers, and just any of the chaff that Nurgle is going to be trying to slow Khorne down with and bog them down. They also do have a pair of the Cultists of Khorne. These guys are both going to be coming in with that Gate of Khorne, getting in a summon of Bloodletters, and another nice tool to just deal with as much chaff as they can, and just allowing those spawn to really do some heavy work. Now for the forces of Nurgle, who they will be contesting against, we do have triple Forsaken of Nurgle on the field. These guys do have Frenzy, and they will have their work cut out for them dealing with the dual weapons, but they will do quite well against the Halberd variant. And then for the center ranks, we are going to be seeing the Exalted Great Unclean One, the walking monstrous Mortis engine that he is. So he is going to be coming in with the Blight Swarm, a -20 melee defense debuff, and that is going to be a Chain Hex. We also have the Stream of Corruption and the Blight Boil for the 2 spells on his kit. And then the rest of his items, he does have the Cloud of Flies and the Fetid Stench, giving a -8 leadership. And then, of course, that Pestilence Decay, which is that Mortis engine ability that he does bring. And then in support, we do have a couple of the Cultists of Nurgle, and they are both going to be coming in with that Gate of Nurgle, getting those Plague Bearer summons. So both sides are going to be having a pair of summons on the early stages, but that is going to be it for both sides. So let's get things rolling for this fight, as Nurgle is going to be kind of waddling their way forward, and they are going to be spreading out their Forsaken across each points 1, 2, and 3, really trying to kind of divide the Nurgle or the Khorne's attention here. But Khorne has plenty of units themselves to really kind of focus things down, and those spawn will do quite well against those Forsaken, considering with their unbreakable high weapon strength, they will be able to kind of punch through those Forsaken no problem at all. Looks like Khorne is going to be focusing pretty heavily on that center formation, or that center point 2, when they are going to be stacking both the spawn and the halberds together with the Cultists of Khorne, and another halberd is going to be coming down that hill to support. As we do, looks like we have a 1 reinforcement coming in with those 2 weapons, going to be supporting these spawn as they kind of go on to that far point. But there is going to be more Forsaken coming in for Nurgle, as they themselves are going to be looking to get a few more bodies onto that far point in the early stages of this fight. We still have some time before the points do open themselves up, but that's not going to be stopping both sides from engaging here, as the Forsaken going to be charging forward, looking to be getting some damage done to the spawn. And the spawn are going to be kind of caught out without their infantry support, and they're going to be trying to avoid as much of this incoming charge as they can, but they are going to be getting hunted down by these Forsaken, and they are going to be taking some damage in the meantime. But they are pulling the rest of Nurgle's forces away from that point 2, and that is going to allow those halberds to jump onto that point. On to the backside, Forsaken continuing to stream in. We do have some Flesh Hounds as well, going to be getting some nice mobility in for Khorne, but the spawn is going to be circling around to help support each other in the center ranks, as these Flesh Hounds thinking about charging into the Forsaken, but are going to be thinking better of it. And the Nurgle is going to be giving up that chase against those spawn, but they are going to be getting a nice little collapse here by 2 of the Forsaken against the spawn of Khorne. And the other spawn is going to be forced to engage here, because those Forsaken really are doing quite a number on to those spawn, just with that, just the stats that the Forsaken are going to be bringing. That 40 melee attack, poison, just going to be able to do a bunch of damage, but the Flesh Hounds are going to be diving in themselves, as there's plenty of units now just collapsing upon this 1 unit Forsaken. Now, these spawn do end up rampaging, but they are already down to half health before this battle really gets too far underway, so those Forsaken get excellent tools. That is why those Khorne spawn really do want to have at least some infantry support, and those dual weapons are kind of making a line for that point 3, but they definitely are sorely needed against these Forsaken. Forsaken are just trading so very, very well into those spawn early on in this fight, and we kind of spread out and kind of looking. Point 1 is going to be well under control of Khorne on the early stages. Spawn just don't want to be tangling with that dual weapon unit up on that hill, and the great Exalted Unclean One is just going to be sitting in that center point, just welcoming any and all challengers to his great obesity, as he will just love it if any of these infantry do try and swarm him. And he does have his own spawn of Nurgle going to be here to support, but that Mortis engine is now going to be starting to drain things bit by bit as he just wallows right on in, and we are going to be getting that Plague Bear summons, and we're going to be getting a nice little spell going right through these sides. But the Bloodletters are also going to be taken to the field, as both spawns going to be coming in very early on in this engagement. So Plague Bears, Bloodletters, all of which going to be surrounding. We are also going to be getting those Chaos Warriors coming on in to this fight. Plague Bears going to be suffering a bit from all of these units just surrounding it. These guys have very little armor and are going to be taking that damage from those Bloodletters with that bonus versus infantry. But we're going to be getting a Blight Boil into that back little bit there. Going to be hitting both Bloodletters and those Chaos Warriors with Halberds, doing a lot of damage to both of those. But we are going to be getting that Cultist Khorne coming in, looking for another one of his summons. Probably going to be dropping that down, especially with how much damage everything else has taken. These Chaos Warriors of Halberds are going to be terrified themselves and are going to be running for the hills. Bloodletters already completely disintegrated well before their time on that summon, and we are going to be getting some more units coming in. That Herald of Khorne, there is the Lord, but that Lord slot, of course, is going to be taken by that Cultist. But the Herald of Khorne rolling on in himself, not really bringing a whole lot. He does have that Locust of Wrath, which does give plus 40 melee attack in an AoE, so that's a considerable buff, especially in AoE, just a single target, and that is a very good buff to the units of Khorne. But over at point 3, Khorne has been able to take it, but they are just bogging down as now spawn of Nurgle have gotten into this fight. Forsaken still doing very well, able to completely eliminate one of the unit of the Chaos or of the Khorne spawn, and they are doing pretty decently well against the rest of the units. And we're getting a nice collapse here by 2 of these Forsaken going to be diving in against these Exalted Bloodletters, and those are some very expensive units that they're not going to be able to really hold up against 2 units of Forsaken all too well. Now against one of them they'll have no problem whatsoever, but with both of them sandwiching them in those center ranks, definitely going to be in a little bit of a pickle. Fleshhound's going to be pulling out as the rest of those units are doing quite a bit of good damage, and Khorne's still sitting very strongly up on point 1. But in the center ranks, that Exalted Great Unclean One, there is just not a whole lot that Khorne has on the table to really bring him down. All of the spawn and the Halberds have been quickly kind of really pushed out of this area. They really need the spawn to really kind of hold him in place. Those Bloodletter summons is going to be dissipating, and that second Plague Bear summons as well is probably not going to be too much longer. Halberds are going to start poking away at that Exalted Great Unclean One, but that Exalted Great Unclean One is trying to make a run at that Cultist, trying to do some decent damage to him, and they are going to be waddling right back into that center fight as that Blight Swarm does go off, reducing that melee defense, and that is going to be jumping from unit to unit, and he's just going to be walloping down onto this Cultist here, making sure that there's no easy way out for him in this fight. Getting some Chaos Warhounds coming in as well to help kind of muck things up, but there is that spawn that's going to be running down that hill as these dual weapons going to be charging right on into these Forsaken, and they are going to be getting the charge by the looks of things, able to kind of pluck away at a few of the units, but the Forsaken going to be turning tail and running. Do not want to be engaging with those Chaos Warriors in head-on-head combat. They want something there to be able to assist them. Exalted Bloodletters are seeing the last of their fight, and in this little pit, or this mosh pit here, so to speak, Spawn of Khorne finally getting taken down, and it looks like Nurgle is in a rather strong spot here on that far flank as they are slowly taking point 3 back from them. The Herald of Khorne, though, has circled around into this fight. He does have also some spawn support, and Fleshhounds have been able to kind of push back, holding these Nurglings at bay, trying to keep this point in Khorne's favor. They don't want to be conceding anything too early on, especially with how much advantage they have right now in that total point total. They are just way ahead in terms of the points ahead of Nurgle, but Nurgle does finally take point 3 as well as point 2, so they are going to be starting to get some of those points back, but they are going to be needing more than just 2 points here by the looks of things, or it'll be very, very tight. But for the time being, they are on their way back into this game already, kind of really taking care of a lot of what Khorne had on the field. Most of the center ranks of Khorne has been completely decimated, even up onto the high ground. These dual weapons do push a little too far and are going to be suffering a bit from getting too close to that Vanguard, as we do get some Plague Toads coming on in with some more Forsaken here, and they are going to be able to deal with those Chaos Warriors fairly quickly in that regard. And then on to back to point 3 here. Fleshhounds still holding those Nurglings at bay, but unfortunately that Herald was not able to hold point 3 long enough. The spawn did not get into that point in time to do so, but they are going to be doing some pretty decent damage. There isn't a whole lot of spawn left, and those Forsaken are very beat down on top of that. So with the spawn and the Herald, they should be able to really deal with this pocket, though it may take a little bit of time to do so. That's why we're going to be seeing some halberds and a lot of reinforcements coming in for Khorne, Chaos Warhounds, Fleshhounds, and some Chaos Warriors of dual weapons, and they are going to be making a push into that point 3, trying to retake that, as Khorne does have a strong presence here back up on the high ground, as they are going to be taking point 1 back from them, and they are getting pretty close to being able to triple capping Khorne, and they are going to be needing that, considering on how far down they are in terms of points. But there's nothing that this Exalted Unclean One that really has to worry about at this point. There is nothing really strong against him. There's no like Bloodthirster or anything that can really deal with such a huge amount of hit points. I mean, he has 11,000 hit points, 50 armor, but yeah, just his mass and the healing that he's able to get is just so ridiculous. And of course, being a Mortis engine isn't going to help things altogether. But Khorne's having a now strong push into point 3, able to deal with everything that Nurgle had here. Nurgle is starting to throw a few units their way, just some Nurglings and some Forsaken. But with what Khorne has here, they shouldn't have any problems dealing with that. The Fleshhound's probably going to be trying to push away those Forsaken and just kind of hold back Nurgle from this point, as now that Exalted Great Unclean One going to be making his way down this stretch here with his eyes set onto point 3. Khorne is only 1,000 points away from victory, and Nurgle does have the field presence, though, to really kind of start taking some things back, as Khorne is trying to just pull Nurgle's attention in multiple different directions, as they're bringing in some spawn, some Chaos Warhounds, and some Furies as well, trying to just kind of get whatever they can and just try and play against Nurgle's just slow mobility in general, because the Exalted Great Unclean One does not have the greatest speed, and he is going to be very slow kind of moving between these points. The more that Khorne can keep his attention spread in multiple different directions, the more that they are going to be able to prosper here in this late game. But they are just kind of throwing things against him. I mean, that Herald of Khorne at this point is only going to just slow him down. There's no way that that Herald is going to be able to break him, and that Exalted Unclean One is just knowing that exactly, and he's just going to continue to just push and push and push to try and take point 3. As soon as he gets in against those halberds, I mean, they are anti-large, but with that Exalted Unclean One's Mortis engine, he does not have too much to fear there. Khorne is slowly starting to take back the center point here. As you can see, that is starting to edge a little bit into Khorne's favor with that spawn here and all of these Warhounds and those Furies. And they are going to be able to deal with these Plague Toads and those Nurglings fairly well. More spawn coming in down the hill. But there's also going to be some spawn of Nurgle going to be just throwing themselves into point 2, having that Unbreakable, just going to be really trying to just make it very, very difficult for Khorne to remove Nurgle from any of these points, just leaving one of the Forsaken here up on that far point. And if we swing back over to that Great Exalted Unclean One, he is going to be just moving right on into point 3, and they are going to be taking that pretty well. He does get a Blight Boil right on top of those Chaos Warriors of halberds, and they are going to be breaking them. Those Forsaken having no problems dealing with that. So Khorne is going to be losing out on their point 3, and they are going to be getting point 2 back, though. So now Nurgle is going to to have to focus their attention back to the second point, and they really do need to triple cap here. They are only 500 points away from losing against Khorne, and they still have quite a few points left to take themselves. Chaos Warhounds, everything is just going to be pushing forward, just keeping Nurgle off of that second point, as Nurgle just continues to kind of throw in those Forsaken. The Forsaken have done quite well so far in this fight, but they need those fast movers. They need to be able to get onto point 2, which is now solidly in Khorne's favor. I mean, they have 2 units of spawn to deal with, and they have plenty of other infantry. We have some Exalted Bloodletters also coming down the hill, and everything is really going to be pretty much decided at point 2. If Khorne is able to hold point 2, they should be able to win the day, and Nurgle is running as fast as their stumpy little legs can carry them, and Khorne is going to be throwing in some Chaos Warriors with dual weapons to try and delay them for as long as possible. Nurgling just going to be continuing to just push right on past that Herald of Khorne. They need to get onto point 2 as quickly as they can, and they are starting to throw more and more their way, as these Plague Toads as well, with as much mobility as Nurgle is able to muster, is going to be diving on top of that second point and are just going to be trying to get whatever damage they can. But as they do, these Exalted Brothers and those Flesh Hounds are also going to be taking that point, and it is going to be going back into Khorne's favor on that second point. With less than 100 points to go, Khorne just needs to hold off the tide of Nurgle, as they are just coming in hot and heavy. We have 3 units of spawn. We have the Cultists coming in, 2 of those, probably both of which have their summon and that Exalted Great Unclean One, but unfortunately it is going to be a little too late, as Khorne does remain victorious. If that game had gone on too much longer, I don't think they were going to be able to hold Nurgle off of that point, as they were coming into that point in mass. But that's just kind of one of the problems with Nurgle in general, is their slow mobility. So they really weren't able to reach all of the points that they needed to in the regards. But there was nothing that Exalted Great Unclean One had to worry about here, getting almost 3k in total value. Both of the Cultists getting their summons in and then calling it a day, when the Forsaken doing some pretty decent work. These guys actually got 1962 for the reinforcements. All of the spawn had 4 spawn in that reserve pool, just really trying to hold those points, but unfortunately none of them really did all too great. Nothing to really write home about. Again, Forsaken doing pretty nice work, 950, 1125 on those 2, and then the rest of the units, all of these Nurglings actually doing some pretty decent work for their costs, especially with their Vanguard cheap mobility and their capping power. They are a very nice unit to have for Nurgle. As for the forces of Khorne, both of the Cultists getting their summons in and again kind of dipping on out, but the spawn did remarkably better than their Nurgle counterparts, getting 1500, 1335, and then 1404 for those. And then the Halberds, one of them doing pretty decently, other ones nothing too great. Herald gets some value in, but I mean, what was he really going to do against that Exalted Great Unclean One? He really didn't have much in his repertoire for that. The Exalted Bloodletters of Khorne did rather well, 1632, despite getting surrounded by 2 Forsaken early on. They did kind of come back in the late game, but even surrounded on both sides, they were still able to get 1632. Rest of the units, nothing too great to really kind of make a note about. And then that looks pretty much it. Even those 2 units of Flesh Hounds doing okay, but again, they were on the field a couple times throughout that fight. But that is going to be all she wrote. Khorne was able to hold back Nurgle, who was just coming in with everything that they had against that second point, but they were not quick enough. And Khorne does emerge victorious in this fight. Without further ado, we are going to close things up. So I do hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good one.
Blood for the Blood God!